Alex had always loved the idea of escaping to a peaceful place where the noise of the city could not reach him. After years of dealing with crowded streets, traffic jams, and the constant buzz of city life, he finally bought a small house by a lake. It wasn't a huge mansion or a fancy property, but it was perfect for what he wanted: quiet, nature, and the freedom to enjoy his friends and family without interruptions. He imagined weekend afternoons where he could sit on the porch, drink coffee, and listen to birds sing while the soft water of the lake lapped against the shore. That vision had kept him going through long days at work and stressful weeks in the city. From the moment he moved in, Alex felt a connection with the land. The trees around the house were tall and protective, forming a natural wall that separated his home from the outside world. The lake stretched wide and calm, reflecting the sky like a mirror. Some days he would take a small boat out to the center of the lake and just float, letting the current carry him gently as he watched the clouds drift by. It was simple, peaceful, and exactly what he had been looking for. Alex had also bought the house with the idea of having friends over. He loved hosting small gatherings, sharing meals, telling stories, and laughing together. It wasn't about throwing big parties or impressing anyone. It was about spending time with people he cared about, enjoying nature, and making memories that would last a lifetime. When he first invited a few close friends over for a weekend picnic by the lake, he felt a kind of excitement he hadn't felt in years. This would be the first real chance to enjoy the place the way he imagined. His friends arrived on Friday afternoon, carrying coolers, blankets, and fishing gear. Alex greeted each one warmly, happy to see familiar faces after months of busy schedules and missed get-togethers. They unloaded their things and walked toward the lake, the soft grass giving way to a small sandy area at the water's edge. It was perfect for a casual picnic. They spread out blankets, set up a small barbecue, and began unpacking food. The smells of grilled vegetables and meat mixed with the fresh scent of pine trees and water. Laughter echoed across the lake as everyone settled in. For hours, the group enjoyed the simplicity of being together. Some fished, others skipped stones, and a few just lay on the blankets watching the clouds float by. Children played near the water, carefully supervised, while adults sipped drinks and shared stories. It was exactly the kind of peaceful, joyful afternoon Alex had imagined when he bought the house. There were no interruptions, no loud neighbors, and no pressures, just friends, nature, and the quiet hum of life. But not everyone in the neighborhood shared Alex's relaxed attitude. The local homeowners association had a reputation for being strict. Most residents avoided confrontations, preferring to follow the rules quietly, but one member, Karen, had become known for her relentless attention to details and enforcement of regulations. Karen was often seen taking notes, speaking firmly to neighbors and insisting on adherence to every rule, no matter how small. Some people admired her dedication, but others found it overbearing and intrusive. Alex had met her once or twice and found her polite enough, but there had been a subtle tension. He knew she liked to be in control and had a sharp sense of authority. As the afternoon continued, Alex noticed a figure approaching from the edge of the property. It was Karen, clipboard in hand, walking purposefully toward the group. She wore a serious expression, and her pace suggested she was ready to enforce something. Alex felt a slight unease, though he tried not to show it. He knew that sometimes HOA members had to check on residents or enforce rules. But he also knew that he had purchased his property legally and had the right to host guests on it. Karen reached the group and greeted them. Though her tone was firm rather than friendly, she began by addressing Alex directly, mentioning rules about lake access and the presence of guests. Her words were precise, almost rehearsed, as if she had been preparing this speech for weeks. Alex listened carefully, staying calm. He understood that confrontation could escalate quickly if emotions took over, and he wanted to handle this with clarity and composure. While Karen spoke, Alex's friends watched quietly. Some were confused, others were quietly amused. It was unusual for someone to approach a group enjoying themselves in such a direct way, and the contrast between the peaceful setting and Karen's stern demeanor was striking. Alex took a deep breath and responded politely but firmly, explaining that his guests were on his property and that he had the right to use the land as he pleased. He emphasized that he respected HOA rules for communal areas, but this section of the lake was private and legally part of his property. Karen's expression didn't change, and she continued to insist that the rules applied. She cited various regulations and tried to assert authority, expecting Alex to comply immediately. However, Alex remained calm and collected. He didn't argue angrily or raise his voice. Instead, he spoke clearly, using logic and facts to make his point. He wanted to avoid confrontation escalating into hostility, while making it clear that he knew his rights. As the conversation unfolded, Alex realized that this was not just about the guests or the lake. It was about asserting boundaries, understanding one's rights, and maintaining respect in the community. He remembered stories he had heard about neighbors being intimidated by overzealous HOA members, and he was determined not to let that happen. By staying calm, presenting facts, and remaining polite, he aimed to set a standard for how disagreements should be handled. The situation drew the attention of a few other neighbors who were walking nearby. They paused to watch, curious about the interaction. Some whispered quietly among themselves, while others just observed silently. Alex noticed that Karen seemed slightly unsettled by the presence of witnesses, though she tried to maintain her composure. The dynamic had subtly shifted. What started as a one-on-one confrontation was now being witnessed by others, which added an unspoken pressure on both parties. After several minutes of discussion, Karen finally stepped back, though she didn't leave entirely. She seemed to be calculating her next move, while Alex ensured that his guests remained relaxed and comfortable. The children continued to play near the water, and the adults slowly returned to their conversations, though a sense of tension lingered in the air. Alex knew that this was not the end of the story. There would likely be more interactions in the future, and he needed to be prepared. As the sun began to lower in the sky, casting warm golden light over the lake, Alex reflected on the day. Despite the brief confrontation, he felt a sense of satisfaction. He had handled the situation calmly, protected his property, and maintained a peaceful atmosphere for his friends. It was a small victory, but an important one. He realized that owning property came with responsibilities and challenges, but also with the power to set boundaries and stand up for oneself respectfully. By evening, the group gathered around the barbecue, enjoying a meal as the sky turned shades of pink and orange. Laughter returned to the air, and the earlier tension slowly faded. Alex felt grateful for the presence of his friends and the beauty of the lake. The experience had taught him the value of preparation, calmness, and clear communication. It had also shown him the importance of standing firm while remaining respectful, a lesson that would guide him in future encounters. As night fell, the group packed up some of their things, but a few stayed near the lake to watch the stars reflect on the calm water. Alex sat quietly, thinking about the events of the day and the challenges of living in a community with strict regulations. He knew there would be more confrontations, but he also knew that he could face them with confidence and clarity. The lake, his home, and the friendships he cherished were worth protecting. And in that quiet moment, with the gentle ripple of water and the distant calls of night birds, Alex felt a deep sense of peace and readiness for whatever came next. The next morning, Alex woke up early, feeling the crisp air of the lake house brushing against his face as he stepped onto the porch. The sunlight shimmered on the water, casting golden reflections that danced across the surface. The world was quiet except for the occasional bird song and the gentle ripple of water lapping against the shore. It was the kind of morning that made him glad he had decided to leave the city behind. His friends were still asleep inside, recovering from the previous evening's laughter and stories. Alex sipped his coffee slowly, taking in the view, thinking about what had happened with Karen the day before. He knew she wouldn't let the incident go so easily, but he also felt ready to handle whatever came next. By mid-morning, the group was up and moving. Breakfast was simple, fresh bread, eggs, and fruit, but the atmosphere was cheerful. Conversation flowed easily as the friends planned the day's activities. Some wanted to fish, others wanted to swim, and a few were content to just relax by the water. The lake was calm and the temperature was perfect. Everyone seemed happy, enjoying the freedom that came with being away from the busy city. Laughter echoed across the water again, the memory of yesterday's tension fading for a while. It didn't last long. Around mid-morning, a familiar figure appeared at the edge of the property. Karen, clipboard in hand, was walking briskly toward them, her expression serious and determined. Alex's stomach sank slightly, but he forced himself to remain calm. He had faced her before, and had handled the situation with patience and clear communication. This time, He knew it might be more challenging, but he also felt confident that he could manage it without anger or confrontation. Karen reached the group quickly, her voice firm and authoritative. She started pointing out rules, emphasizing that the lake was supposedly for HOA members only, and that guests were not allowed without permission. She spoke quickly, flipping through papers and gesturing to the lake, clearly expecting Alex to comply immediately. Some of the friends looked at Alex, unsure how he would respond. They had seen the previous encounter but were curious to see how it would unfold this time. Alex took a deep breath. He understood that Karen's insistence came from a sense of control rather than malice. He responded calmly, explaining that the area they were using was part of his private property. He mentioned that while he respected HOA rules for common spaces, this section of the lake belonged to him legally, and he had the right to have guests. He spoke with clarity, ensuring that his words were firm but polite. He wanted to avoid escalation while protecting his rights. Karen didn't back down. She continued quoting regulations and tried to assert her authority, her voice carrying a tone of frustration. It was clear that she believed her position gave her the power to enforce these rules. Alex remained patient, listening carefully and responding to each point with facts. He explained property boundaries, ownership details, and the difference between private and communal areas. The friends watched silently, realizing that this was more than a simple disagreement. It was a test of Alex's ability to handle pressure and assert his rights calmly. The conversation drew the attention of a few neighbors who were walking nearby. They paused, curious about the interaction. Some whispered quietly, while others simply observed from a distance. Alex noticed that Karen's confidence seemed slightly shaken by the presence of witnesses, though she tried to maintain control. The dynamic had shifted subtly. What started as a one-on-one confrontation was now being watched by multiple people, adding an unspoken accountability that made Karen's position more complicated. Karen attempted to escalate, mentioning she would contact authorities if Alex didn't comply. She tried to make it sound like a threat, but Alex remained composed. He calmly explained that he would cooperate with any legal requirements, but that his guests had the right to be on his property. He emphasized respect for rules, but also made it clear that his private property rights could not be ignored. His tone was firm but non-aggressive, projecting confidence without hostility. As the conversation continued, Alex's friends began to subtly show support. Some nodded quietly while others whispered encouragement. Their presence helped strengthen Alex's position without being confrontational. He realized that the support of friends and neighbors could make a significant difference when dealing with someone like Karen. It wasn't about creating a showdown. It was about asserting boundaries, presenting facts, and remaining composed. Karen seemed frustrated, glancing at her clipboard and then at the observing neighbors. She tried to regain control, speaking faster and more insistently, but Alex remained steady. He spoke clearly, calmly, and with authority. He explained again that the lake area was part of his private property, that guests had every right to be there, and that he would handle any disputes through proper legal channels if necessary. His confidence began to shift the energy of the confrontation, turning it from a one-sided assertion of authority into a discussion where facts and legality mattered. As minutes passed, Karen began to retreat slightly, though she didn't leave entirely. Alex noticed that her approach had changed from aggressive to calculating. She was considering her options, trying to find a way to assert her authority without overstepping. Alex remained calm, letting the tension hang in the air without reacting emotionally. He knew that patience and clarity were more powerful than anger or shouting. During the standoff, Alex reflected on what had happened. He realized that owning property came with challenges that went beyond simple enjoyment. There were rules, regulations, and personalities to navigate, but he also understood that knowledge, preparation, and calm communication were his best tools. By staying composed and presenting facts, he could handle confrontations without losing control or escalating the situation. It was a lesson in self-confidence, boundaries, and respectful assertion. The friends slowly returned to their activities, resuming fishing, swimming, and relaxing by the lake. Laughter gradually returned, and the children played safely near the water. Alex joined them, keeping a watchful eye but also allowing everyone to enjoy the day. The previous tension had not disappeared entirely, but it had lessened, replaced by a sense of cautious calm. Everyone seemed to understand that disputes could arise, but that they could be handled respectfully and peacefully. By afternoon, the group had settled into a rhythm. Some swam, some fished, and some just sat and talked, enjoying the warm sun and gentle breeze. Alex felt a sense of pride in how he had handled the morning's confrontation. He had remained calm, asserted his rights, and maintained a peaceful environment for his friends. The experience had shown him that confidence and preparation could overcome intimidation, and that standing up for oneself didn't have to involve anger or conflict. As the day went on, Karen was nowhere to be seen. Alex assumed she was regrouping, possibly planning her next move, but he felt prepared. He had documented property boundaries, understood his rights, and had the support of friends and some neighbors who had witnessed the confrontation. He knew that future interactions might occur, but he also knew that he could face them with confidence, facts, and calm composure. When evening arrived, the group gathered around the lake again, watching the sun dip below the horizon and turn the sky into a palette of pinks and oranges. Alex felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The day had been challenging, but it had also reinforced his understanding of his property, his rights, and the importance of standing firm respectfully. He realized that challenges were part of life, especially when dealing with complex personalities and rules, but that they could be managed with patience, clarity, and calm. As the night fell and the first stars appeared, the group packed up some items but stayed near the lake to enjoy the quiet. Alex reflected on the events of the day, feeling a mix of relief and readiness. He knew that owning property and enjoying private land came with responsibilities, including standing up to overreach. But he also knew that he could do so without anger, with dignity, and with the support of those around him. The lake, the house, and the friendships he nurtured had become symbols of both peace and empowerment. Alex went to bed that night feeling prepared, confident and grateful for the lessons of the day, ready to face whatever came next with calm determination. The following weekend, Alex prepared for another gathering, anticipating that Karen might return. He wanted to enjoy his property and the lake with friends, but he also wanted to be ready if any confrontation occurred. He spent some time reviewing property documents, taking note of boundaries, and even mapping out areas that were clearly his. He felt confident knowing that he had a clear understanding of his land, its legal boundaries, and the rights that came with ownership. Knowledge gave him a sense of control, something he had realized was crucial in dealing with persistent HOA members. Friends arrived in the morning, bringing their usual energy and excitement. They carried picnic baskets, fishing poles, and blankets, eager to enjoy a day by the lake. The sun was bright, the air fresh, and the water calm. Alex welcomed each friend warmly, happy to share this space he loved so much. The group quickly settled into routines, some fishing along the shore, others swimming, and a few sitting on blankets chatting about life. Laughter and conversation filled the air, creating a relaxed, joyful atmosphere. As the group enjoyed their activities, Alex noticed a few neighbors passing by. Some waved, familiar with his gatherings and friendly with the group. Others paused, curious, but didn't interfere. Alex smiled, understanding that the presence of other residents could either complicate or support interactions with the HOA. He made a mental note that having a network of neighbors who respected his rights might be helpful if any disputes arose. Karen did indeed make her appearance around mid-morning, clipboard in hand, walking briskly toward the gathering. Her demeanor was determined, and her gaze was fixed on Alex as she approached. She began speaking immediately, pointing out supposed violations and insisting that the lake was restricted to HOA members only. She cited rules and regulations, clearly expecting Alex to comply without question. The friends paused, looking toward Alex for guidance, sensing that this might become another confrontation. Alex took a deep breath and listened carefully. He had learned from the previous encounters that remaining calm and composed was key. He didn't interrupt, didn't raise his voice, and waited for Karen to finish her points. Then, he responded politely but firmly, explaining that the area they were using was private property, that he had legal rights to host guests, and that the HOA rules didn't apply to his land. He emphasized respect for communal spaces but clarified that this was not a shared area, and that his guests were entitled to be there. Karen's response was immediate and firm. She argued more aggressively this time, clearly frustrated that her authority was being challenged. She mentioned the possibility of contacting law enforcement if Alex didn't comply, trying to make it sound like a threat. Alex maintained his calm demeanor, explaining that he would cooperate with any legal inquiry, but that there was no valid reason to remove his guests from his private property. He presented documents, property maps, and clear explanations, showing that he was well prepared and informed. The friends watched quietly, some impressed by Alex's composure, others slightly tense, unsure how Karen would react next. Alex realized that the support of those around him could be powerful. He had not needed to raise his voice or show aggression. Simply being informed, calm, and assertive was enough to make a difference. Karen's insistence began to waver slightly, as she realized that the confrontation wasn't going as she expected. Her confident, assertive approach was being met with facts and calm clarity, rather than fear or submission. Some neighbors stopped to observe, curious about the ongoing discussion. They whispered among themselves, noting how Alex remained composed while Karen persisted with her claims. Their presence added an unspoken weight to the encounter, subtly shifting the power dynamic. Karen began to glance around nervously, aware that witnesses were watching her approach to enforcement. This quiet attention made it harder for her to act purely on assertiveness without being accountable to others. Alex continued to speak with measured calm. He explained his understanding of property law, clarified boundaries, and reiterated that the guests were on his land with full rights. He assured Karen that he respected HOA rules for communal areas, but emphasized that his private property rights were not subject to arbitrary enforcement. His tone remained polite, firm, and confident, projecting authority without hostility. This approach gradually softened the tension, showing that disputes could be resolved through clear communication rather than conflict. Karen seemed to struggle to find a way to assert control. She paused several times, flipping through her clipboard, consulting imaginary notes, and reconsidering how to respond. Alex noticed these pauses, recognizing them as small victories. He remained steady, letting her frustration surface without engaging in it, demonstrating that patience and composure could counteract aggression. He understood that this confrontation was as much about psychological presence as it was about property boundaries. Over time, the situation reached a quiet stalemate. Karen stepped back slightly, still insisting on her viewpoint but no longer attempting to enforce immediate compliance. Alex's calm, factual approach, combined with his preparedness and the support of witnesses, had shifted the dynamic. The friends resumed their activities, and the laughter and joy gradually returned to the area around the lake. Children played safely, and adults continued fishing and talking, creating an atmosphere of peaceful enjoyment. During this pause, Alex reflected on the events and realized that preparation was key. Owning property and enjoying private spaces came with responsibilities, including understanding rights and anticipating potential conflicts. By documenting boundaries, understanding legal rights, and remaining composed, he had turned a potentially stressful confrontation into an opportunity to demonstrate confidence and respect. He also recognized the importance of building support among neighbors, whose silent presence had helped neutralize some of Karen's assertiveness. As the afternoon sun began to descend, casting a warm glow across the water, Alex decided to further reinforce his position. He calmly spoke to his friends, explaining that if Karen or any HOA member attempted further interference, he would handle it through proper legal channels while maintaining calm and respect. He emphasized that enjoying the lake, his property, and time with friends was a priority, but it didn't have to involve conflict. His words reassured everyone, creating a sense of security and confidence. By late afternoon, the day returned to normal rhythm. The group fished, swam, and shared stories by the lake, enjoying the peaceful environment. Alex felt a sense of accomplishment for maintaining composure under pressure and for protecting the enjoyment of his property without escalating the situation unnecessarily. The encounter had been challenging, but it had strengthened his confidence and reinforced the importance of knowledge, preparation, and calm assertion. As night approached, the friends packed up some items but remained near the lake to enjoy the evening. The sky reflected in the water, turning deep shades of orange and purple, creating a tranquil atmosphere. Alex felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that he had handled the confrontation effectively and that his property, friends, and peace of mind were secure. He reflected on the lessons learned, that standing up for oneself could be done respectfully, that preparation and clarity were more powerful than anger, and that support from friends and neighbors could make a real difference. When everyone finally left for the night, Alex stood by the lake alone for a moment, listening to the gentle ripple of the water and the distant sounds of nature. He felt a strong sense of readiness and confidence for whatever might come next. Karen's persistence would likely continue, but he knew he could face it with calm determination, backed by knowledge and preparation. The lake, the house, and the friendships he cherished had become symbols not only of peace and enjoyment, but also of resilience, empowerment, and the importance of standing up for one's rights respectfully. Alex went to bed that night feeling a deep sense of accomplishment and readiness for the future, knowing that he had turned challenges into lessons of confidence, composure, and respect. The following weekend, Alex felt a mix of excitement and preparedness. He loved having friends over and enjoying the lake, but he knew Karen could appear at any time. This time, he wanted to enjoy the day fully while staying ready for any confrontation. He spent the morning checking the property, making sure everything was in order. He reviewed documents about property boundaries, took note of the areas that were clearly his, and reminded himself that knowledge and confidence were his strongest tools. The calm morning air and sunlight reflecting on the water put him at ease, and he felt ready to host another gathering. Friends arrived mid-morning, bringing their usual energy and joy. They carried food, drinks, blankets, and fishing gear, eager to enjoy the day. Alex greeted everyone warmly, happy to share the lake and his home. The group quickly settled along the shore, some setting up small picnic spots, others launching a small boat into the water. The sun was warm, the air fresh, and the lake calm. Laughter and chatter filled the air, creating a lively but relaxed atmosphere. Around late morning, a familiar sight appeared at the edge of the property. Karen, clipboard in hand, walked purposefully toward the group. Her expression was serious, her eyes fixed on Alex as she approached. She began speaking immediately, pointing out supposed violations and insisting that the lake was restricted to HOA members only. Her tone was firm and insistent, clearly expecting Alex to comply without question. The friends paused their activities, sensing that another confrontation was about to unfold. Alex remained calm. He listened carefully, allowing Karen to finish speaking before responding. He then explained politely but firmly that the area they were using was part of his private property. He clarified that while he respected HOA rules for shared spaces, this section of the lake was legally his, and he had every right to host guests. He presented his points clearly, calmly, and with authority, ensuring that everyone present could understand his position. He did not raise his voice or act aggressively, knowing that composure was essential. Karen responded quickly, her voice raising slightly as she tried to assert her authority. She mentioned the possibility of calling authorities if Alex did not comply, attempting to make her words intimidating. Alex remained steady. He calmly explained that he would cooperate with any legal inquiry, but his guests were on his property, and there was no valid reason to remove them. He presented documents, maps, and clear explanations to support his position. The friends watched quietly, impressed by Alex's calm confidence and clear reasoning. As the conversation continued, a few neighbors who were passing by stopped to observe. Some whispered quietly among themselves while others simply watched silently. Their presence added an unspoken accountability to the interaction. Karen glanced around nervously, aware that she was being watched. Alex noticed this, understanding that the attention of others made it more difficult for her to act solely on assertive energy, without considering the consequences. The discussion became a quiet standoff. Karen attempted several times to insist on her viewpoint, but Alex's calm, fact-based responses steadily undermined her authority. He explained property boundaries, ownership rights, and the distinction between private and communal spaces. He emphasized respect for HOA rules and shared areas, but reiterated that his private property rights could not be ignored. His calm confidence began to shift the dynamic, showing that disputes could be handled with clarity, patience, and respect, rather than confrontation. Some friends subtly showed support. They nodded quietly, whispered encouragement, or simply observed with presence. Their support, though understated, reinforced Alex's position and helped prevent the situation from escalating. Karen seemed increasingly frustrated, flipping through her clipboard and consulting imaginary notes, Unsure how to assert authority effectively without overstepping legal boundaries, Alex remained composed, letting her frustrations surface while maintaining his own calm. After several tense minutes, Karen took a step back, still insisting on her claims but no longer trying to enforce immediate compliance. The friends resumed their activities and laughter gradually returned to the lake. Children played safely, adults fished and chatted, and the environment slowly returned to a sense of peaceful enjoyment. Alex felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that his calm and prepared approach had protected the gathering without escalating tension. During a quiet moment, Alex reflected on the experience. Owning property and enjoying private land came with responsibilities and challenges. Knowledge of rights, preparation for potential disputes, and maintaining composure were essential. By documenting boundaries, understanding legal rights, and remaining calm, he had turned a potentially stressful confrontation into a demonstration of confidence, respect, and preparedness. The presence of supportive neighbors also highlighted the importance of community awareness in these situations. As the afternoon progressed, the group settled into familiar routines. Some swam, some fished, some sat talking or watching the lake. The sun reflected on the water, creating a tranquil and beautiful scene. Alex felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He had handled the confrontation without anger, ensured his guests were safe, and maintained a peaceful atmosphere. The lake, the house, and the friendships were secure, and he had reinforced his confidence in handling challenges respectfully and effectively. By evening, the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. The group gathered near the water, enjoying the colors and quiet reflections on the lake. Alex felt grateful for the lessons of the day. That confrontation could be managed without conflict, that knowledge and preparation were powerful tools, and that support from friends and neighbors could make a significant difference. The experience had strengthened his understanding of his property, his rights, and the importance of standing firm while remaining respectful. As the night fell and stars began to appear, the group packed up some items but stayed close to the lake to enjoy the calm. Alex reflected on the events, feeling a sense of accomplishment and readiness for the future. Karen's persistence might continue, but he knew he could face it with calm determination, backed by knowledge and preparation. The lake, the house, and the friendships had become symbols of peace, empowerment, and resilience. Alex went to bed that night feeling satisfied, confident, and prepared for whatever might come next, knowing that challenges could be faced with composure, clarity, and respect. The weekend had arrived, and Alex felt a sense of calm determination. He knew that Karen might try to interfere again, but he also knew that he was ready. He had learned from previous encounters, and he felt confident in his understanding of the property, his rights, and the way to handle conflict calmly. The lake stretched out before him, peaceful and inviting, and he looked forward to spending another day with friends in a setting that felt like a private paradise. The air was crisp, the sunlight sparkling on the water, and the gentle rustle of the trees made him feel at peace. Friends arrived early, bringing baskets of food, blankets, and fishing gear. There was excitement in the air as everyone settled in. The group spread out along the shore, some near the water to fish, others under the shade of trees to relax. Children played near the water, laughter filling the air, and adults shared stories, catching up after busy weeks. Alex moved among his guests, checking that everyone was comfortable and enjoying themselves. The atmosphere was joyful, the kind of day he had imagined when he first bought the lake property. As the morning passed, Karen appeared at the edge of the property once more. Clipboard in hand, she walked briskly toward the group, her expression serious and determined. Alex felt a familiar tension but kept his composure. He had faced her before and had learned that calm, factual communication was more effective than confrontation. He watched as she approached and began her usual statements about HOA rules, lake access, and guest restrictions. Her tone was firm, expecting Alex to comply without question. Alex took a deep breath and listened carefully. When she finished speaking, he responded calmly, explaining that the area they were using was private property. He reiterated that while he respected HOA rules for shared spaces, this section of the lake was his to use as he pleased. His voice was calm but firm, and he maintained eye contact without aggression. He presented documents and maps showing property boundaries, clearly establishing that his guests had the right to be there. He emphasized respect for community rules, but made it clear that private property rights could not be ignored. Karen grew frustrated, her voice rising slightly as she tried to assert her authority. She mentioned contacting authorities, attempting to create a sense of pressure. Alex remained steady, explaining that he would cooperate with any legal inquiries but that his guests had every right to be on his land. He continued to speak with clarity and confidence, presenting facts rather than opinions. His calm demeanor contrasted sharply with Karen's rising frustration, and the friends watched in admiration as he handled the situation gracefully. A few neighbors passing by stopped to observe. Some whispered quietly, others simply watched. Their presence added an unspoken accountability to the encounter. Karen glanced around nervously, aware that witnesses were watching. Alex noticed this and understood that the attention of others made it more difficult for her to act solely on assertive energy, without considering consequences. He remained calm, letting her frustration show while maintaining his own composure. The conversation became a quiet standoff. Karen attempted to insist on her viewpoint, but Alex's calm, fact-based responses steadily undermined her authority. He explained property boundaries, ownership rights, and the distinction between private and communal spaces. He emphasized respect for HOA rules and shared areas, but reiterated that his private property rights were not negotiable. His patience and clarity began to shift the dynamic, showing that disputes could be resolved through composure and facts rather than confrontation. Friends subtly supported Alex, nodding quietly or offering small words of encouragement. Their presence reinforced his position without being aggressive. Karen's frustration grew as she realized that she could not intimidate him. She paused several times, flipping through her clipboard and reconsidering her next words. Alex remained composed, aware that calm confidence was the key to maintaining control of the situation. He knew that patience and preparation were more powerful than anger or confrontation. Eventually, Karen stepped back, no longer insisting on immediate compliance. The friends returned to their activities and the atmosphere gradually returned to normal. Children played safely, adults fished and shared stories, and the laughter and joy of the group filled the air once more. Alex felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that he had protected his property and his guests without escalating the conflict. During a break in activities, Alex reflected on the lessons learned. Owning property came with challenges, especially when personalities and rules complicated the enjoyment of private spaces. Knowledge of rights, preparation for potential disputes, and maintaining composure were essential. By documenting boundaries, understanding legal rights, and remaining calm, he had turned a potentially stressful situation into a demonstration of confidence, respect, and preparedness. The support of friends and neighbors highlighted the importance of community awareness and solidarity. As the afternoon progressed, the group settled into familiar routines. Some swam, some fished, and some sat talking under the shade of trees. The lake sparkled in the sunlight, and the gentle sounds of water and wind created a peaceful atmosphere. Alex felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He had faced another confrontation with patience and clarity, ensuring that his property, his guests, and the peace of the day were protected. The lake, the house, and the friendships he nurtured had become symbols not only of enjoyment, but also of resilience and empowerment. By evening, the sun began to set, casting warm orange and pink hues across the water. The group gathered near the lake to enjoy the colors and tranquility. Alex felt grateful for the lessons of the day, that standing up for oneself could be done respectfully, that preparation and clarity were powerful tools, and that support from friends and neighbors could make a real difference. The experience had strengthened his understanding of his property and his confidence in handling challenges without conflict. As night fell, the group packed up some items but remained near the lake to enjoy the quiet and reflection. Alex stood alone for a moment, looking out over the water and listening to the gentle ripple against the shore. He felt a sense of peace and accomplishment, knowing that he had handled the situation with dignity, calm, and confidence. Karen's persistence might continue, but Alex was ready. He had learned the value of patience, preparation, and clarity, and he knew that challenges could be faced and resolved without anger or aggression. The stars appeared overhead, reflecting on the calm surface of the lake. Alex felt a profound sense of gratitude for the land he owned, the friends who supported him, and the lessons learned through these experiences. The lake had become more than a place for relaxation. It was a symbol of resilience, empowerment, and the ability to stand up for one's rights respectfully. As the night grew darker, Alex went to bed with a sense of fulfillment, confidence, and readiness for whatever challenges might come next, knowing that he could protect his property and the people he cared about with composure, clarity, and dignity. David Chen stood on his back deck, coffee mug in hand, watching the sun climb over the lake. The water looked like glass, reflecting the orange and pink colors of the morning sky. He took a deep breath of the cool air and smiled. This was exactly why he had bought this place 2 years ago. At 42 years old, David had worked hard to make this dream come true. He was a software consultant, and after years of saving every penny he could, he finally found the perfect property. 3 acres of land with direct access to the lake. The house itself was nice, but it was the location that sold him. Private beach, a long wooden dock stretching into the water, and enough space to never feel crowded. Behind him, he could hear his wife Linda moving around in the kitchen. Their 2 kids, Sophie and Ryan, were still asleep upstairs. Teenagers could sleep through anything, especially on a Saturday morning. But today was special. Today was their 3rd annual summer barbecue, and they had a lot to get ready. David walked down the wooden steps from his deck to the lawn. The grass was green and freshly cut. He had spent all day yesterday making sure everything looked perfect. The picnic tables were set up near the water. The grill was cleaned and ready to go. The dock had new rope railings that he had installed just last week. What made David especially proud was that this was all his. Every inch of this property belonged to him. No one could tell him what to do with it. And that was important because his land sat right next to a community called Riverside Estates. That community had a homeowners association, or HOA for short. But David's property was not part of it. Never had been, never would be. When he bought the house, the previous owner had been very clear about that. Her name was Mrs. Patterson, a sweet old lady in her 80s who had lived there for 40 years. During the closing meeting, she had grabbed his hand with surprising strength and looked him right in the eye. "Listen to me carefully," she had said. "Those HOA people next door will try to act like they own everything around here. They don't. Your property is older than their community. It's not part of their rules. Don't let them push you around." David had thanked her and promised to remember. At the time, he thought she might be exaggerating. How much trouble could a homeowners association really cause? But over the past 2 years, he had learned that Mrs. Patterson knew exactly what she was talking about. The HOA had tried several times to get him to join. They sent letters. They knocked on his door. They even offered to waive the membership fees for the first year. But David always politely declined. He had checked with his lawyer, studied his property deed, and knew his rights. His land had been there long before Riverside Estates was built. He owed them nothing. "Coffee's getting cold," Linda called from the deck. She was wearing her favorite summer dress, white with blue flowers. Her long black hair was tied up in a ponytail. At 40, she still looked as beautiful as the day they met in college. David jogged back up the steps. "Just checking everything one more time. Want to make sure it's perfect?" "It's always perfect," Linda said, kissing his cheek. "You stress too much. People are coming to have fun, not to inspect your lawn." I know, but we're expecting about 20 people today. I want everyone to have a good time." Linda laughed. "They will. They always do. That's why everyone keeps coming back every year." Inside, David could smell bacon cooking. Linda had been up earlier than him as usual. She was the organized one in the family, while David worried about the outdoor setup. She had the entire meal planned down to the last detail. Burgers, hot dogs, ribs, 3 different salads, fresh fruit, and her famous chocolate chip cookies. "What time is everyone arriving?" David asked, refilling his coffee. "Miguel said he'd be here around 11 with the kids. My parents are coming at noon. Your work friend said early afternoon. So we should expect the first wave in about 2 hours." David glanced at the clock. 9 in the morning. Plenty of time. He heard footsteps on the stairs and turned to see Sophie coming down. At 16, she moved with that half-awake shuffle that teenagers perfected. Her brown hair was messy, and she was still in her pajamas. "Morning, sweetheart," Linda said. "Hungry?" "Starving," Sophie mumbled, dropping into a chair at the kitchen table. "Where's your brother?" David asked, still dead to the world. "I tried knocking. He told me to go away," David smiled. "Ryan was 14 and could sleep until noon if they let him. Tell him if he's not down here in 30 minutes. He's not getting any bacon." "That'll work," Sophie said, already looking more awake at the smell of food. As the morning passed, the house came alive with activity. Ryan finally stumbled downstairs, lured by the promise of breakfast. Linda assigned everyone tasks. Sophie was in charge of setting up the drink station. Ryan had to carry all the chairs from the garage down to the lawn. David focused on getting the grill ready and setting up the volleyball net near the beach. By 10:30, David was sweating. The July sun was already hot, and he had been running around for over an hour. But the property looked amazing. The American flag hung from the pole near the dock. The red and white checkered tablecloths were on all the tables. The coolers were filled with ice and drinks. The beach toys were piled near the water for the kids. "Dad, someone's here already," Ryan called from the house. David checked his watch. Probably Miguel. His younger brother was always early. David wiped his hands on his shorts and headed toward the driveway. Sure enough, Miguel's blue pickup truck was pulling in, followed by a sedan that David recognized as belonging to his sister-in-law, Patricia. "You're early," David called out, grinning. Miguel jumped out of the truck wearing board shorts and a tank top. Wanted to beat the traffic. Plus, the kids were driving us crazy asking when we could leave. 3 children piled out of the vehicles, ranging from ages 8 to 12. They were already in their swimsuits, carrying towels and looking at the lake with excited eyes. "Can we go swimming now?" the youngest one asked. "Let's at least say hello first," Patricia laughed, hugging David. More cars began arriving. Linda's parents pulled up in their old station wagon. David's colleague Tom showed up with his wife and 2 kids. By 11:30, the property was filled with people. Adults stood around talking and laughing. Children ran toward the water, screaming with joy. The smell of grilling meat filled the air. David stood near the grill, flipping burgers, and looked around at his property full of happy people. This was what life was about. Good food, good company, and a beautiful place to enjoy it all. He had worked hard for this, and he was going to enjoy every moment. He had no idea that in less than an hour, everything was about to change. 3 months had passed since that memorable summer day when Barbara tried to kick everyone off David's property. Fall had arrived, painting the trees around the lake in shades of red, orange, and gold. The air was cooler now, and the water had taken on a darker, deeper blue. David sat on his deck, wrapped in a fleece jacket, sipping hot coffee and watching the morning mist rise off the lake. Life had settled into a peaceful rhythm again. The barbecue incident had become a favorite story to tell at family gatherings, something they all laughed about now. But the aftermath had been more complicated than he expected. The day after the confrontation, David had received a formal apology letter from the Riverside Estates HOA board. Not from Barbara, of course. She had resigned from the board 3 days after the incident. The letter explained that the board had reviewed all property boundaries and confirmed that David's land was indeed private and not subject to HOA rules. They apologized for any confusion or inconvenience. David had appreciated the gesture, even though he knew it was partly to avoid legal trouble. Tom, his lawyer friend, had advised him to keep the letter in a safe place just in case. What surprised David most was